court. Would I recommend it? No. But at the same time, that's how it was designed. So my philosophy is really simple. The legislature writes the law. Okay? My colleague writes the law. I interpret it, apply it. This idea of activism is what we're really saying is that you're taking an outside system of ideas. You're taking an alternate system of beliefs and you're trying to graft it on to our laws. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's parasitic. It's something that's trying to suck off the lifeblood of our country. It does not work. And it becomes immediately apparent. It becomes immediately apparent. Now, you know, there's some really smart judges out there. And a lot of them can push a political agenda with the law. And they can write their opinions in such a fashion that maybe to avoid criticism. But if you take a hard look, you can tell what it happens. And it should be rejected at every chance.
Yeah, look, I've seen both sides of this issue. I think I've shared this with him. One of my motivating factors is also as running for judges is to make sure that judges are actually interpreting the law, not writing the law. I've been involved in situations where the courts have really taken on more of the legislative authority. I fought that in Harrisburg. I am kind of the go-to guy in Harrisburg when it comes to the separation of powers on this issue. This is the trial court, so we aren't necessarily going to have the ability to write opinions that are really going to change the actual, the interpretation of laws necessarily. But we set the facts, we set the record, so that whenever these cases do get appealed, or whenever they are working through the appellate system, that there is a strong factual basis in how those decisions are made. So, you know, I do think that we do serve a role in making sure that we are looking at what the Constitution says and applying it. We are not legislators, we are not the executive branch, we are the judicial branch. We are there to interpret the law, not to write the law.
Thank you. We'll start with Torren. We're just gonna bounce back and forth. How will you make sure your decisions don't leave folks scratching their heads?
So probably every decision is eventually going to make someone scratch their head, right? I mean, I think the question is making sure, you know, decisions are well thought out and have a good backing, right? And they're not made in a quick, steadfast way. So, but, you know, every case is a case-by-case situation. But I think it's really important. One of my strengths, I think, is my writing ability and my ability to explain my point of view. I think, you know, judges speak through opinions, typically, through their written opinions in deciding cases. Obviously, cases can be decided, especially, you know, it depends on the case, right? But I'll just use the family court, for example, because we keep going back to that. A lot of those cases are set on law that you have to apply certain factors to the decision making that applies in those cases. So it just being well thought out and having a well thought out argument as to why you're making a decision, I think will help confusion in certain situations. Obviously, if you're on the side of the issue where you don't like the outcome, you're going to probably think it wasn't explained well or it's not the way you wanted it to turn out. There's always someone who's, you know, not going to necessarily like the decision, or if it's a true compromise, you know, that means everybody's a little upset, right? So I think the point of the matter is just trying to explain, you know, depending on what the case is, the factors, the law, and apply it to the facts in a concise but articulate way, I think is the way to solve that confusion issue.
Paul?
Patience, kindness, taking the time to talk to people. So in practicing law, the biggest thing I've noticed is people get really surprised when they don't understand what's happening. That's when people get surprised, it's when they get upset. And the best way to combat that is to take the time to talk to them, to sit down with them, to converse with them, to put yourself in their shoes and ask the same questions that you would have if you were in that. Because let's face it, a lot of times the law reads like Greek. It's hard to understand, and you're in a stressful situation. Your life's on the line. Maybe you're going to jail. Maybe your family's